The desperate plea. The emergency session of the Galactic Peace Assembly had been called for the first time in 3 centuries. Representatives from 47 civilizations filled the crystalline amphitheater on Nexus Prime, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of distress. Ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her translation device and studied the faces around her. Fear was universal, it seemed, regardless of species. High Chancellor Zephyr of the Altarian Republic stood at the central podium, his silver form shimmering with barely contained emotion. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy as master diplomats, capable of negotiating peace between the most hostile civilizations. If they were calling for help, the situation was beyond desperate. Honored delegates, Zephyr's voice resonated through the chamber's translation systems. We face an unprecedented crisis. The entity we have designated as the Void Swarm has consumed 3 complete star systems in the past 6 months. The Kepler colonies, the Arcturus trade hub, and most recently, the entire Vegan Confederation have been absorbed. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah had read the preliminary reports, but seeing the holographic displays now made her stomach turn. Where once there had been thriving worlds filled with billions of sentient beings, only empty shells remained, planets stripped of all organic matter, their surfaces reduced to barren rock. Commander Vrak of the Corthian Defense Force, his insectoid features clicking with agitation, stood to address the assembly. The swarm doesn't conquer or colonize. It consumes every living thing, every piece of technology. Every scrap of biological material gets absorbed into its collective mass. We've never encountered anything like it. Sarah leaned forward as the holographic display shifted to show combat footage. The Void Swarm appeared as a writhing mass of dark, organic tendrils that moved through space like liquid shadow. When it encountered resistance, the mass would split into countless smaller entities that swarmed over enemy vessels, dissolving them on contact. The footage showed the final battle for Arcturus Prime, where the combined fleets of 6 species had been consumed in less than 4 hours. "What exactly are you asking of the Assembly?" inquired Dr. Nexus, the crystalline delegate from the Silicon Collective. His form sparkled with mathematical calculations as he processed the tactical data. Zephyr's expression remained diplomatically neutral, but Sarah caught the flicker of hope in his large, dark eyes. "We are requesting humanitarian assistance from all member civilizations, medical supplies for refugee populations, transport vessels for evacuations, and perhaps some escort ships to protect civilian convoys. The Altarian Republic has already committed our entire merchant fleet to evacuation efforts." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's climate control. Humanitarian assistance, evacuation efforts. These beings were planning to run, to save what little they could while the swarm consumed everything else. She thought about the footage she'd just witnessed, about entire civilizations being erased from existence, and felt something stir in her chest that was decidedly undiplomatic. Captain Marcus Steele, her military advisor, must have sensed her thoughts. He leaned over and whispered, "Ambassador, with respect, this isn't a humanitarian crisis. This is an extinction event." The debate continued around them. The Zentorian Collective offered to provide medical supplies and temporary shelter on their outer colonies. The Praxian Federation promised to allocate 15% of their transport capacity to refugee operations. Each offer was generous by galactic standards, but pitifully inadequate against the scale of the threat. The Corthian Defense Force can spare 50 escort vessels, Commander Vrak announced, his mandibles clicking with what Sarah had learned to recognize as resignation. "Our primary fleet must remain committed to defending our home systems." Sarah watched the proceedings with growing frustration. These beings were treating the Void Swarm like a natural disaster, something to be endured and survived rather than fought and defeated. The galaxy's greatest military minds were discussing evacuation routes and refugee camps, while an unstoppable force consumed everything in its path. When Zephyr finally turned to address the human delegation, Sarah felt every eye in the chamber focus on her. Humanity was still relatively new to galactic politics, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most species viewed humans as energetic but naive, quick to adapt, but lacking the wisdom that came with millennia of civilization. Ambassador Chen, Zephyr said formally, the Altarian Republic would be grateful for any assistance Earth might provide. We understand that human industrial capacity is limited, but perhaps some cargo vessels or medical personnel could be spared for the evacuation effort. Sarah stood slowly, her mind racing. She thought about the reports she'd studied, about the tactical analyses that painted a picture of hopeless retreat. She thought about her own species' history, about the countless times humanity had faced extinction and chosen to fight rather than flee. Most of all, she thought about the footage of the swarm consuming everything in its path, and the 47 civilizations around her who seemed resigned to their fate. High Chancellor, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, I need to clarify something. Are you asking Earth to help evacuate the galaxy, or are you asking us to help save it? The question seemed to puzzle Zephyr. I'm not certain I understand the distinction, Ambassador. The void swarm cannot be negotiated with, cannot be reasoned with, and has proven immune to all conventional weapons. Our only option is to preserve what life we can, while the entity moves on to consume other regions of space. Sarah felt that familiar stirring again, the same instinct that had driven her species to survive ice ages, plague outbreaks, and global wars. With respect, Chancellor, that's not our only option. That's just the only option you're willing to consider. A murmur of confusion rippled through the assembly. Commander Vrak's compound eyes focused on her with new intensity. Ambassador, the combined military forces of 6 species could not even slow the swarm's advance. What are you suggesting? Sarah activated her personal communicator and sent a priority message to Earth's Defense Council. The response came back within minutes, faster than she had expected, but exactly what she had hoped for. She looked around the chamber at faces that represented billions of lives, all waiting for humanity's answer to their crisis. I'm suggesting that Earth's response to an extinction-level threat will be somewhat different from the galaxy's traditional approach, she said carefully. I just requested immediate consultation with our military leadership. We should have a response within 72 hours. The session adjourned with little fanfare. Most delegates seemed satisfied that humanity would contribute what little it could to the evacuation effort. Only Commander Vrak approached Sarah afterward, his insectoid features betraying curiosity. Ambassador, your response was unusual. Most species, when faced with overwhelming force, seek to minimize casualties through strategic withdrawal. What makes humans different? Sarah considered the question as she watched the other delegates filing out of the chamber. Commander, has your species ever faced extinction? Several times throughout our history. We survived through careful planning, strategic retreats, and diplomatic negotiations with our enemies. Then you've never truly faced extinction, Sarah replied. When humans face a threat that wants to completely eliminate us, we don't negotiate. We don't retreat. We don't try to minimize casualties or preserve resources for future generations, because we understand that without victory, there won't be any future generations. She turned to face him directly. Commander, every species in this chamber is planning to lose gracefully. Humanity doesn't know how to lose gracefully. We only know how to win ugly. The next 72 hours passed quickly. Sarah remained at the diplomatic compound, monitoring communications from Earth and watching as the galaxy's greatest minds developed increasingly sophisticated evacuation plans. The Altarians had identified 12 potential refuge sectors where the swarm might not reach for decades. The Corthians were organizing convoy routes that would minimize civilian casualties during the exodus. Everyone was planning for humanity's inevitable defeat. Everyone except humanity. Sarah's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission from Earth. The message was brief, encrypted, and marked with the highest possible security classification. As she decoded it, Her expression shifted from surprise to amazement to something approaching awe. Captain Steele found her an hour later, staring at the message display with an expression he'd never seen before. "Ambassador, what's Earth's response?" Sarah looked up at him, then at the tactical display still showing the swarm's relentless advance through the galaxy. She thought about the evacuation plans, the refugee camps, the careful calculations of acceptable losses. Then she thought about the message she just received, about the response that would change everything. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think we're about to give the galaxy a lesson in human problem-solving." The human solution. The emergency session reconvened exactly 72 hours later, but the atmosphere had changed. Word had spread throughout the diplomatic compound that Earth's response was unusual, though no one seemed to know exactly what that meant. Sarah noticed that several military attaches had joined their civilian delegations, and the chamber's security presence had been quietly doubled. High Chancellor Zephyr called the session to order with his characteristic diplomatic grace. "Ambassador Chen, the Assembly is eager to hear Earth's contribution to our collective response to the Void Swarm crisis." Sarah stood, but before she could speak, her communicator chimed with an incoming priority transmission. She activated the chamber's main holographic display, and suddenly the Assembly was looking at Admiral Rebecca Torres, Earth's fleet commander, broadcasting from the bridge of a warship none of them recognized. "Galactic Peace Assembly." Admiral Torres began without preamble. "I am Admiral Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. I understand you have a problem with something called the Void Swarm." The directness of her statements sent a ripple of discomfort through the chamber. Galactic diplomacy was built on careful courtesy and elaborate protocols. This human was addressing them like a military briefing. "Admiral Torres," Zephyr responded diplomatically, "we are indeed seeking assistance with evacuation and humanitarian efforts related to the swarm entity. Any support Earth might provide would be most welcome." Torres' expression didn't change. "Chancellor, with respect, Earth is not interested in evacuation efforts. We're interested in eliminating the threat." The chamber fell silent. Commander Vrak was the first to find his voice. "Admiral, I don't think you understand the scale of this entity. The Void Swarm consumed 3 entire star systems. Our combined fleets couldn't even slow it down," Torres finished. "Yes, we analyzed your combat reports. The problem isn't the swarm's capabilities. The problem is your tactics." She gestured, and a holographic display shifted to show Earth's solar system. Sarah gasped along with everyone else in the chamber. Where once there had been busy shipping lanes and peaceful orbital stations, now there was the largest military mobilization in human history. 72 hours ago, Earth received Ambassador Chen's report on the Void Swarm. Torres continued. "We immediately declared a state of total war. Every human government, every corporation, every individual has been mobilized for one purpose: the complete destruction of this threat." The display showed massive shipyards working around the clock, their construction bays filled with vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Civilian factories had been converted to weapons manufacturing. Entire cities had been transformed into military training facilities. Dr. Nexus, his crystalline form flickering with rapid calculations, spoke first. "Admiral, this level of mobilization is unprecedented. The economic disruption alone must be catastrophic. Approximately 43% of Earth's gross domestic product has been converted to military production." Torres agreed. "Every able-bodied human between the ages of 18 and 60 has been drafted or volunteered for military service. We estimate the social and economic cost at roughly 100 years of normal development." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The idea of voluntarily accepting such massive sacrifice was incomprehensible to most galactic civilizations. "Why?" Zephyr asked, genuine bewilderment in his voice. "Why would your species accept such enormous costs for a threat that may not reach Earth for decades?" Torres' expression hardened. "Because, Chancellor, we've studied your projections. If the swarm continues its current expansion rate, it will consume the entire galaxy within 300 years. That's not a problem for future generations to solve. That's a problem that requires immediate action. Commander Vrak leaned forward. Admiral, even if your species possesses superior technology, the swarm has proven capable of adapting to any weapon system within hours. What makes you think human tactics will be different? The display shifted again, showing detailed tactical analyses. Sarah recognized the work of Dr. James Morrison, Earth's premier military strategist. The graphics showed the swarm's previous encounters, but now they were annotated with human observations. The swarm adapts to individual weapon systems and tactical approaches, Torres explained. But it's never faced simultaneous attacks from multiple vectors using completely different technologies and strategies. Your species fight the way you negotiate, carefully, thoughtfully, with minimal risk and maximum preservation of resources. She gestured to another display, showing human military doctrine. Humans fight the way we evolved, with overwhelming force, acceptable losses, and complete commitment to victory. We don't adapt our weapons to fight the swarm. We adapt our entire civilization. Dr. Morrison's voice joined the transmission from Earth's Strategic Command Center. The swarm's adaptation capability is impressive, but it has limitations. It requires time to analyze and counter new threats. Our strategy is to hit it with so many different attacks simultaneously that its adaptation process becomes overwhelmed. The display showed projections that made the assembly gasp. Human fleets armed with everything from antimatter weapons to biological warfare agents. Kamikaze vessels designed to deliver maximum damage before being destroyed. Entire battle groups trained specifically to fight an enemy that learned from every encounter. The estimated human casualties for this operation are 67% of committed forces, Torres stated matter-of-factly. We consider this an acceptable loss ratio for complete victory. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Sarah watched the faces around her, seeing the same expression on every delegate. It was the look of beings who had spent their entire civilizations avoiding the kind of total commitment that humans had just casually accepted. General Lu Wei's image appeared alongside Torres and Morrison. The first phase of Operation Cleansing Fire begins in 18 days. We have identified the swarm's current position and expansion vector. Instead of engaging it defensively, we will attack every position it currently occupies simultaneously. The tactical display showed the scale of the human plan. Not evacuation routes or refugee camps, but attack vectors and target priorities. The humans had identified every world, every space station, every resource node that the swarm currently controlled, and they planned to hit all of them at once. "This is madness," whispered Dr. Nexus. "The logistics alone are impossible. The coordination required, the resources needed, are being provided by every human on Earth," Torres interrupted, "and by every human colony throughout the galaxy. Our entire species has accepted that this is an existential moment. We either destroy the swarm completely, or we die trying." Zephyr struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. "Admiral, surely there must be alternatives. The loss of life you're proposing is staggering. Perhaps containment strategies, or have failed." Torres finished. "Chancellor, your species has been trying containment and evacuation for 6 months. In that time, the swarm has consumed 3 star systems and grown stronger. Our analysis indicates that any strategy short of complete destruction simply gives the entity more time to adapt and expand." Sarah stood, feeling the weight of the moment. She had requested Earth's help expecting ships and supplies. Instead, her species had committed everything they had to a war that most of the galaxy couldn't even imagine fighting. "The human fleet will be ready for combat operations in 18 days, she announced to the assembly. "We're not asking for your permission, and we're not asking for your resources. We're offering you a choice. Help us destroy this threat completely, or watch us die trying to save a galaxy it was ready to abandon itself." Commander Vrak's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. "Ambassador, What exactly are you asking of us? Intelligence sharing, tactical coordination, and target designation. Sarah replied, "We don't need your fleets or your weapons. We need your knowledge of the swarm's current positions and capabilities. Help us find it, and we'll help you kill it." The debate that followed was unlike anything in the Assembly's history. For the first time in 3 centuries, delegates argued not about diplomatic protocols or resource allocation, but about the fundamental nature of survival itself. Some species pledged immediate support, inspired by humanity's total commitment. Others worried about the precedent of such massive military action. In the end, 31 civilizations agreed to provide intelligence and support for the human operation. The remaining 16 chose to continue with evacuation plans, unable to comprehend or accept the scale of sacrifice that victory would require. As the session adjourned, Commander Vrak approached Sarah one final time. "Ambassador, I must ask, what if you're wrong? What if the human strategy fails and the swarm adapts to your tactics as well?" Sarah considered the question as she watched the tactical displays showing human fleets preparing for battle. She thought about her species' history, about every time they had faced extinction and chosen to fight rather than flee. "Commander," she said finally, "if we're wrong, then at least the galaxy will know that someone tried to save it instead of just trying to escape it. And if we're right, then in 18 days, the Void Swarm will learn why humans are the only species in the galaxy that considers total war a reasonable response to an existential threat." The battle would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned the difference between surviving and winning. But for now, Sarah watched the displays showing her species preparing for a war that would either save everything or destroy them trying, and felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood. She felt proud to be human.